Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of E.W. Jackson for America. By the way, I never explained this. TCC, that's the called church. That's what TCC means, the called church. I thought about that. I've worn a shirt as it's the called church spelled out and wondered whether people assumed everybody would know TCC means the called church. But I realized people may not have put that together necessarily. But that's what that's for, TCC, the called church. Well, welcome again. I've got plenty to talk about, but I want to begin with something that I'm sure none of you most of you aren't aware of. There is in Virginia a leftist rag called Blue Virginia. They're an online leftist news propaganda thing. And that's all they are, is propaganda. Well, they wrote an article primarily about Winsome Sears day before yesterday, and they mentioned me in the article. They're criticizing Youngkin for supporting Sears because they say Sears is an extremist, okay? And, of course, when you start talking Virginia, particularly when they start talking about extremists and extremist candidates, they've always got to make reference back to me because I am the paradigm of extremist candidates as far as the left is concerned. So when we're talking about extremism, we say, well, that person's just like E.W. Jackson, and that's all you need to say. And look, I haven't run for office now in Virginia in 7 years since I've run for anything. It's been 12 years since I ran for lieutenant governor, won the Republican nomination. And you would think by now they would have forgotten about me, right? But oh no, I am haunting their dreams. Or maybe we should say, I am their nightmare. So at any rate, in this article they say, here's one of the criticisms that they have of Winsome Earl Sears, who is now running for governor. They say, Sears campaigned with and celebrated the endorsement of E.W. Jackson, a staunch anti-LGBTQ plus bishop who has a long history of spewing hateful rhetoric against LGBTQ plus Americans. So I read that. It came up in my feed as somebody mentioning me, talking about me. So I read that. And then I went to the comment section and I made a comment. I said, homosexuality is sin. Killing unborn babies is sin. I don't hate people because they engage in these sins, but they will answer to Almighty God. And I said, that's not hate speech. That's simply the truth. And then a little notice came up, said, we're waiting for your comment to be approved for publication. I could see it, but probably nobody else could. So I went back to check to see. So are they going to approve my comment? No, they took it down. Now, I said all that simply to say, these leftists are totalitarianists. They're tyrannical. They do not believe in free speech. What they really want to do is shut everybody down. They're always pointing the finger of fascism at others, but they are the true fascists. They are the true communists. They are the true totalitarianists. And by the way, fascism and communism they're twins. They're twins. Fascism is just taking on sort of hyper-nationalism as part of its ideology, whereas communism believes in the so-called, world government, where communism basically just becomes the rule of the day, and you don't even really need government anymore. That's the ridiculous theory of Karl Marx. So they took my comment down. Homosexuality is sin. Killing unborn babies is sin. I don't hate people because they do that, but they are going to answer to Almighty God. That's not hate speech. That's just the truth. They took the comment down. These people want to rule us. They don't have any regard for the Constitution. They don't have any regard for freedom of speech. They don't have any regard for freedom of conscience. The only thing they have regard for is their own sexual perversions and their own thirst for power to impose that upon everybody, including your children, my grandchildren, and anybody else they can get their hands on. That's the only thing they care about. Now, you would think, because they said, right, that I'm an extremist, you would think they leave the comment up so that their people could say, yeah, look how crazy E.W. Jackson is. He thinks homosexuality is sin. But they don't even want their people confronted with the truth. You know, we sometimes make the mistake of believing that their real agenda is to get us. Their real agenda is to get Donald Trump, for example, or to get E.W. Jackson in this case. Their real agenda is to take over the country and impose their will on the nation and ultimately the world. That's their real agenda. And they want to destroy Donald Trump or destroy people like me simply because we stand in their way. Folks, if I went insane and woke up tomorrow morning and said, I'm a leftist, I believe all the garbage, all the lies, all the deceptions that they put forth, I see it now, they would fall in love with me. They would be putting me on their outlets. I'd probably be on CNN if I woke up tomorrow morning insane enough to believe all that garbage. I'd probably be on CNN the next day. Here's a former extremist who is now seeing the light. He is going to be celebrating killing unborn babies with us. He is going to be celebrating every sexual deviance we want to impose on people's children. We now like him. He's one of the good black people. He's all right. He's one of the good ones. You know, in the perfect tone of the slave master voice. He's one of the good ones. But that's where we are. It is my prayer that Winsome Sears will be elected governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Yes, I proudly, graciously campaigned with Winsome Sears. I don't know that I'll have that opportunity again because I feel like the state has shifted even further left, even though Donald Trump, he lost by a smaller margin in 2020, in 2024. We lost Virginia by a smaller margin than he did in 2020. I think we've got a lot of work to do in Virginia. And I think anybody who doesn't understand that is fooling themselves. They really are. They're fooling themselves. And I think that the future of Virginia for any Republican right now is to be a needle threader. In other words, to surrender the state to the left and just basically try to accommodate them as best you can so that they don't see you as a big threat and try to destroy you. I hope that's not the road that Governor Youngkin walks down. I hope that's not the road that Winsome Sears walks down. I hope that's not the road that J.C. Miyares walks down. I hope we can activate the many traditional voters out there who agree with you and me and get them to the polls. I have to tell you, when I was campaigning, I often found strong Second Amendment supporters didn't vote. I often found Christians who didn't vote. And I frankly, I was shocked. I don't get involved in all that. I'm thinking to myself, your First Amendment liberties are at stake here. Because let's make folks, if the left had its way, they would take away our First Amendment liberties. You know that. Just like Blue Virginia. Now, of course, it's a private media outlet, and they can censor me if they want. They're not violating the letter of the Constitution because they're not a government entity, but they're certainly violating the spirit of it, and they're certainly violating the spirit of journalism. I mean, they're all up in arms now because the Trump administration banned AP from the White House gaggle because in their emails and whatnot, they indicate what their pronouns are. And basically the White House wisely said, well, if that's where you are, you're never going to be fair with us because you're nuts. You are far left crazy, and we don't need you in the press gaggle. Now, the Supreme Court said you can't do that, but I think they're wrong. I think they're wrong. I think that when it comes to the media, they're supposed to take a posture of neutrality toward policies and simply report the facts and report what people on both sides say about those facts. They're not supposed to come in with their own agenda. And when they announce that they have an agenda, I think that the White House is right and within its discretion to say, well, we don't want you in here because we know what your agenda is, and we're not going to allow you to come in and use the platform to simply propagandize against us when you've already announced it. I mean, for example, in this case, they don't want to call, AP doesn't want to call the Gulf of America the Gulf of America. They want to continue to call it the Gulf of Mexico. But the president of the United States has the authority to change the name of that particular geography. He has done so. What they can do is have their editorial people editorialize against it and say, we think this is wrong. But as a news agency, they should simply be reporting the facts as they are. And they should be calling it now the newly named Gulf of America. And then let their editorial people comment and say, we think this is bad. I don't know why they would, but you don't come in and say, well, we're as a news agency, we're not going to call it the Gulf of America. Because now, here again, what you're saying is, we are against you. Well, then why would I want you at the White House press briefings? I mean, I might as well invite the communist Chinese, I forget the name of but they've got a thing. I mean, but I might as well invite them to come on in. I mean, might as well invite the Communist Workers' Party newsletter people to come on in. I think the Supreme Court is just wrong about that. Now, of course, that can be abused. You can say, well, then nobody's neutral, so we're only going to let in the people who are for us, and that would be just as wrong. But I think what's supposed to be a neutral news agency publicly announces that they are opposed to you and opposed to your policies. Not somebody on their editorial staff writes that, but the news agency says, we will act in a way that demonstrates our disagreement with you. Then you should say, well, then we're going to act in a way that doesn't give you access. Works for me. I don't think that's censorship at all. They can still go out there and print whatever they want to print. They can go out there and talk about how the president is a dictator and he wouldn't let them in his press gaggle and all, they can do all that. But what you can't do is have access to the White House when you publicly announce we are against you. I mean, so that's where we are left with this whole abuse of the press. They have turned themselves into a propaganda machine for the Democrat Party. So really, they are the demon press. Because that's all they are, mouthpieces for the Democrat Party. So my little comment, homosexuality is sin, we're not printing that. My comment, killing unborn babies is sin, we're not printing that. My comment, I don't hate you for it, but Almighty God will judge you for it. Not printing that. That's not hate speech, it's simply the truth. We're not printing any of that. Okay, so that's where we are. I've got another issue I want to deal with, so stand by here. Don't leave as I do my little bit for our Standard Wars dinner. Folks, it's coming up on May the 16th. That's, if my math is correct, that's 1 month and 5 days. 1 month and in fact, today is Friday. That's really actually exactly 5 weeks from today, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's got to be 5 weeks from today. So I hope that you will come. I hope that you will support it. I just got a sponsorship check in from a wonderful organization down in South Carolina, Nutrimax. Nutrimax does, well, I won't hold that up, but Nutrimax does products for you. You've probably heard of it, but if you haven't, check them out. I mean, they really do some good stuff. About 90% of their business is supplements for pets. And my son and daughter-in-law have 3 dogs, and they say their products, they knew about them before I even met them, but I've gotten a chance to meet them and get to know them. But they said their products are outstanding. And I got a bunch of products and sent it to them. They said, man, this stuff is great. It really is. But they also produce stuff for human beings. And I take their supplements for bone and joint health. I take one of their supplements. They also got this wonderful supplement that is a kind of broccoli supplement. I love broccoli, by the way, but I still probably don't eat enough of it. I probably eat broccoli 2 or 3 times a week, maybe 4, but probably more like maybe 3, probably about 3 times a week. But a wonderful supplement for those who don't love broccoli as I do and don't eat any of it. In my view, broccoli is the best vegetable God made for mankind. So, but Nutrimax came on as a sponsor at the James Madison sponsorship level. I want to encourage all of you, support in whatever way you can. You can't come, you can donate, you can buy a ticket, you can sponsor a table, or you can be a sponsor. Sponsoring tables and being a sponsor are 2 different things. Sponsoring table just means you buy a reserved table, but being a sponsor means much more than that. And we recognize the sponsors at the event, of course, and are grateful for them. Our goal is 50 sponsors. Last year we had 30. I've got a lot more to do, but pray for us, please, and support us in whatever way you can. Go to standamerica.us. That's standamerica.us. By the way, I did a couple of hours with American Family Radio yesterday for their share-a-thon and had a wonderful time and got a tremendous response. Now, those of you who watch me on this and also maybe follow my podcast on American Family Radio or listen to American Family Radio, I just want to say thank you for your support. I think it's probably, in my view, the finest media organization in America. I really believe that, folks, because they're giving the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help us God. And you're not going to get that almost anywhere else. Even outlets that claim to be conservative, or some that claim to be Christian, they're playing gospel music or Christian music, they're not going to say a thing about the issues of the day. Because they want to try to appeal across the board, and they don't want to take a stand. So, American Family Radio, you're going to get both. You're going to get the Word of God without apology. You're going to get the application of that word to the issues of the day without equivocation, without compromise, and you're going to end up not only spiritually enriched, but intellectually enlightened because of the things that are going to be shared with you there. In fact, for one of those hours, I was on with Abraham Hamilton III, and a couple of other people, my good friend Alex McFarland, Bert, and others. These are brilliant people, folks. I mean, they're not just people who love God, but they're brilliant people. People who God has just gifted them and blessed them. And I tell you, you're not going to find a better group of people to provide the information that you need when it comes to trying to understand what's going on through a biblical lens or a biblical worldview. Okay, let me come back to the issue. This is something I've been thinking about, and I wanted to share it with you. You know, the hatred of Donald Trump goes on unabated. I'm sure you all know. I think Donald Trump has had more injunctions filed against him than all the other recent presidents combined. Maybe more than all the presidents in history combined. I think he's got about 170 injunctions pending against him now to try to stop him from doing the things that he's doing. And of course, we know he's been indicted, he's been prosecuted, he's been sued, he's been investigated, he's been impeached, and on and on and on it goes. There's been assassination attempts, at least two that we know about. So I don't think there's ever been a more persecuted president than President Donald J. Trump. But I wanted to talk about something that I think you will find interesting and enlightening and helpful. I think we often fall into the mistaken view that the left hates Donald Trump because he's Donald Trump. And I mean, I think we think about that for a moment. We know that that's not the case, but I think we kind of fall into that because, we say things like, well, they would agree with this except it's Donald Trump doing it. And so they hate Donald Trump. So now they disagree with it. I think it's much, much deeper than that, though, folks. And it's why we should never forget. They also hate us. They hate you. They hate me. It's like Blue Virginia. They hate us. I've got 6 reasons I want to share with you why the left, the Democrat Party, hates Donald Trump and hates you and me. Because look, just like I said, if I woke up tomorrow morning insane, out of my mind, and suddenly everything to the left suggests I started agreeing with, man, I would, boy, I'd be just like that idiot that comes on MSNBC, the guy who's the former head of the Republican National Committee, the effeminate black guy. You know what I'm talking about. I'd be just like him. Man, they'd be putting me up there. They would just, like I said, they would say, here's one of the good ones. The same is true for Donald Trump. If he went insane overnight and woke up tomorrow morning and started espousing and implementing policy in agreement with what the left wants, they'd fall in love with him. They say, well, we don't know what happened to the guy, but we know one thing. He must have been struck with the lightning bolt of wisdom and insight because he finally sees, he finally gets it. And he's the best president we perhaps ever had. I mean, they would flip on a dime, I guarantee you. Because here are the 6 things. There are 6 reasons why they hate Donald Trump. And by the way, these are not necessarily in order of importance, except for the last one. The last one is extremely important, maybe more important than some of the others, but they all come together in a mosaic. Number 1, he doesn't support their racist narrative. He doesn't buy into this notion that America is a systemically racist country and that we need DEI and we need affirmative action and we need to pat all minority people on the head like they are little children and take care of them and give them welfare and give them advantages and do race norming and do all these things that do really accomplish nothing but the denigration and subjugation of people. Enshrining them, cementing them, perhaps is a better word to use, cementing them into an inferior status by virtue of this racist condescension. He doesn't buy it. And he's doing exactly what I would do. Every one of these DEI offices, I'd close them so fast it would make the people who work in them make their heads spin. I'd slam the door so hard on them on the way out that it would blow them out into the street. See, this racist narrative is so important to these people controlling this country because they need minorities, they need women, they need sexual deviants to believe that they're on their side and that they ought to always vote for them. So if you're a pedophile and you want to take advantage of children, the Democrat Party is the party you want to turn to because they're going to have the utmost sympathy for you. And if you're one of these doctors who believes that your mission in life is to cut the genitalia off little boys and the breasts off little girls because you think they're going to be a better person by the time you finish operating on them to the tune of who knows how much money you're going to make, hundreds of thousands of dollars doing this stuff at billions now. This is a multi-billion-dollar economy now of mutilating children. And if you're into that, the Democrat Party is where you want to be. This racist narrative is where the Democrat Party is. And anybody who doesn't buy into that narrative, they hate. That's why they hate me. And they hate Donald Trump for it. And I praise God that he doesn't buy into that stupid narrative. Here's number 2, and I alluded to it. Donald Trump doesn't support the sexual deviancy narrative, that any and everything goes. Now look, Donald Trump's not as conservative on these matters as I am, because I'm coming strictly from a biblical worldview, and the Bible has a whole lot to say about this issue, right? A whole lot to say. In fact, I once, let's see if I still have it. I once, for part of one of my programs, listed out all the scriptures. No, not all of them, many of them, because there are a lot of scriptures that people don't even know are referring to homosexuality and sexual deviancy. They don't know it because the Bible in the Old Covenant, when it refers to, if you read during Josiah's revival, not only his, the Bible says he banished the perverted persons, meaning he kicked them out of Israel. It's talking about homosexuals. Sodomites would be the translation. He banished them. So people don't even recognize those kinds of texts, but the Bible is replete with texts condemning homosexuality, that it is wrong in the sight of God, that it is an abominable sin. I don't have time to read all of these to you, but Romans 1:18, Isaiah 58:1. Oh, wait a minute, Isaiah 58:1, that's not about that. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong set of scriptures here. At any rate, at one point, I said I'd put together a list, but you know what? And I know I did. I don't know whether I still have it in here, though, because it's been a while, and I've got a bunch of notes in here. So, but at any rate, there are lots and lots and lots of scriptures, Old and New Covenant, that make clear that homosexuality and cross-dressing, men trying to dress up like women, women trying to dress up like men, is wrong in the sight of God. These things are wrong in the sight of God. Yeah, I can't find where I have them all listed in one place. But at any rate, and so Donald Trump is not nearly as conservative as I am, because I follow a biblical worldview on this stuff, and I don't think he strictly adheres to that. I mean, so for example, I would never interview Bruce Jenner, because he's confused. He thinks he's a woman. He's a man. I'd never interview him. I don't want to talk to him. I don't care if he's in agreement with me about women, about guys playing on women's sports. His whole persona is an affront to me, because it's an affront to God. I think Donald Trump once said he didn't care which bathroom Bruce Jenner used. He didn't say Bruce Jenner. I think he called him by this assumed woman's name he's now got. I mean, this guy's a father and a grandfather with a female name. So what is he now? Is he their mother now? I mean, you see how confused this is? Come, Johnny. Come, Susie. I want you to meet your grandfather. And he's in a sequin dress with lipstick on and a wig. And the kid's looking at my what? Oh, this is your grandfather. How can this be my grandfather? It's a woman. The kid probably doesn't know any different. Well, this stuff is just, folks, this is just, it's such degeneracy and confusion. And by the way, and that's another reason why I wouldn't legitimize it, because you realize the pain this inflicts on these kids. Now, of course, they'll try to brainwash them into believing that, oh, it's okay. Everybody understands this, but they don't. And children, before they are taught to buy into the propaganda and the indoctrination, children, my wife had a situation in public school one time where two women walked in for a teacher meeting or something, and there were other kids around. And the kid who they were coming in behalf of pointed at one of the women and said, "That's my daddy." And what do you think the kids did? They howled. That can't be your daddy. That's a woman. Well, my mommy told me that that's my daddy. See, this is abuse of children, folks. This is imposing upon them this utter moral confusion that I think does tremendous psychological and emotional damage to these kids. So, but President Trump, while he's not as clear as I am on this, he's not buying into it either. I mean, he's not promoting this stuff. It's been primarily women in sports that he's been standing up against, but they want you to go along with the same thing. So that's number two. Number three, he is not willing to celebrate killing unborn babies like it's some kind of virtue. He is pro-life. And these people are pro-death. Like I said, when I wrote to Blue Virginia, I said killing of unborn babies is sin. We're not printing that. Why? They're not printing it not because they hate me. They're not printing it because they hate truth. Now, they hate me because I'm promoting the truth, but it's the truth that they first and foremost hate. If I walk away from the truth and I walk into the world of lies with them, they'll love me too. And see, I said this in an earlier program, part of their problem is they see Trump as a traitor because they thought he was one of them. See, when he was a New York playboy and he was donating money to everybody because he's trying to get favor with politicians to get things done, they thought he was one of them. And oh boy, there's nothing worse for the Democrat Party than for them to believe that you're one of them and then to find out that you left the reservation or that you left the plantation, that you ran away, that maybe you were never really one of them, or if you were, you decided that you wanted your moral and intellectual freedom and you broke from them. Or that's a career death sentence as far as they're concerned. They want you destroyed. Is number 4, that he doesn't buy into the globalist Marxist narrative, because the Democrat Party has now bought into globalism. We've got to get the world functioning in unity and as one. Oh, please. The UN is such a wonderful institution. Yeah. No. We need to be at the World Economic Forum so that we can share with all of the influences of the world how we can bring the world together and teach everybody to eat bugs and teach people to stop having children because they're destroying the planet, and teach people that they need to surrender the sovereignty of their nation to wiser people who know what's best for them. That's the Democrat Party. They buy into all of that. President Trump does not. And they hate him for it. Here's number 5. He doesn't support the notion that government ought to be able to impose its agenda upon the American people. That the government ought to, in effect, be the boss of the people. President Trump is doing things that the American people want because he understands that the American people are his boss. Under our constitutional republic, elected officials are accountable to the American people. We're not accountable to our elected leaders. They are accountable to us. We don't work for them. They work for us. And see, that's not the way the Democrats think. The way they think, they want people working for them. They want the people bowing to their will. Do I need to prove that? COVID. I rest my case. And President Trump, thank God, I'm glad I came to this. President Trump is restoring military people who were kicked out because they wouldn't have this abominable shot because of conscience, Christian or otherwise. They wouldn't have this abominable shot. And the Biden administration kicked out, I think the number is 6,000, but don't hold me to that, but thousands thousands of military people were dismissed. Now, they were threatened with being dismissed with less than an honorable discharge. I don't know whether any of them were dismissed with less than an honorable discharge or not. But if so, folks, that's a crime. Somebody who served honorably, and because they won't have this experimental shot that you want to give them, you're now going to call them dishonorable or less than honorable in their service? I mean, are you crazy? But you see, when you believe that the government should be able to impose its will on people, that people are answerable to the government, not the other way around, then you get what the left gave us during that period. You're not getting the shot. What are you, a murderer? You're trying to kill people? They wanted to ridicule you. They wanted to close your business. They wanted to close your church, lock you in your home. I mean, do I need to prove that that's the way they think, that they want the government imposing its will on people, that they do not accept the constitutional republic system that says, no, the government is limited by the Constitution of the United States and answerable to the people of the United States because we are governed by the consent of the governed, not by the dictatorial will of the government. See, I believe Donald Trump gets that. I think he just viscerally gets that. And so he sees himself as serving the American people, doing what the American people need to have done. Whereas the Democrats and the left see themselves as doing whatever they want to do and forcing the American people to like it or lump it. And they hate him for the fact that he doesn't buy into their governmental hegemony over the American people. That's number 4. Number five, he doesn't support using the government to impose their agenda on the American people. Number six, and this is the last one. And I said this may be the most important one. These are not necessarily in order of importance, but if we thought about it a little bit, we'd probably give him a hierarchy. He has exploded their plan of using illegal immigrants as a strategy to get and keep complete hegemony over the United States of America and its people. Now, folks, let there be no mistake whatsoever that that's what they're up to. I looked up a list. Let me see, did I keep it? Of the various states that, let's see what I do with that, that the Democrats have complete control over. I looked it up in Ballotpedia, and there are about 10 states Republicans have virtually no power whatsoever. The legislature is completely controlled by Democrats overwhelmingly. And some of them you might get a Republican, a leftist Republican like Mitt Romney got elected in Massachusetts. But he said when Mitt Romney ran for governor of Massachusetts, maybe he was running for Senate at the time, he said, "I am more pro-gay than Ted Kennedy." Yeah, that's how you get elected in a place like that. You can be a Republican, but you better be a leftist Republican. Because then you're willing to do the bidding. Bill Weld, another one. I was there when Bill Weld was governor of Massachusetts. Bill Weld was as bad as worse than any Democrat governor. I mean, he used to brag about the fact that during his days in college, his roommates were homosexuals. Wouldn't have been me. But he bragged about that. In fact, did I tell you all this story? I got to get ready to go here. I've got about 5 more minutes left. But yeah, I think I did tell you all this. But I was at this press conference opposing the homosexual so-called gay rights bill. And a guy, I'm standing at the podium, a guy rush toward the podium, threatening me, screaming, yelling, and like he's going to attack me. And, look, folks, that was back in the 1980s. I was a much younger man. People would be taking a chance to mess with me even now, but I was a much younger man. And I told my friends, I said, well, you know what? He better thank God he didn't make it, because he would have found a real problem on his hands. But he didn't. The police wrestled him down, arrested him for disturbing the peace. Governor Bill Weld appointed that man his liaison to the gay community. I'm using their words, that in that case, not mine, but the liaison to the homosexual deviants, to the sexual deviants. That man, he rewarded him for trying to hurt me. I kid you not. The Republican governor of Massachusetts rewarded this guy for trying to hurt me. Because, it was clear he was coming to try to hurt me. You don't rush toward the stage screaming and yelling because you're going to get up there and just get in a person's face. He was coming toward the stage to disrupt. I don't know whether he's going to try to body block me, or just run into me, or push the podium over on me, or what he was planning to do. But the threat was taken seriously enough that the security in the room got to him before he could get to me, wrestled him down and arrested him, took him out. And Bill Weld rewarded him for it. So Bill Weld was saying, you know what? The next time there's a press conference like that and you have a shot at E.W. Jackson, just make sure you get to him. Man. But since you made a gallant effort, we're going to reward you anyway. It made the newspaper that he appointed the guy. And that he was the same person who had been arrested for disrupting a press conference just as I was about to speak. So some of these Republicans who get elected in places like Maryland, Massachusetts, and some of these other states, if they manage to do so, they get elected because they're leftists. They're as bad or worse as any Democrat. So, folks, that's why they hate us, and that's why they hate Donald Trump. So look, let me finish this thought, though, about this. So look, the Democrats want for America, and they're about 10 states, what they've done for California, Hawaii, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maine, Maryland, Vermont, Illinois, and there are a couple of others. Those are one-party states. Okay, they are one-party states where the Democrats literally have absolute control over what happens. And well, look at Chicago. Look at Illinois. Look at the nutcase governor they've got in Illinois. Look at Colorado is another one. Look at I don't know that they've got complete hegemony in Colorado, but of course they're working toward it because they got a homosexual governor in Colorado now. Colorado is, in fact, I think they may be the only state right now with a first gentleman married to another gentleman, so-called. Of course, they're not really married because they can't be. They might be married in the sight of Colorado law, but they're not married in the sight of God. That whole thing is an abomination. But see, what Democrats want to be able to do is to impose their will on the American people, just like they've imposed their will on the people in these other states. You saw what happened. They didn't care whether you agreed with what they were doing at COVID or not, or really whether you raised any spiritual or moral or objection. They didn't care. Rodney Howard Brown down in Florida got elected. Thank God I had a good relationship with the police department in Chesapeake, Virginia. They called me and asked me, was I going to keep my church open? I said, yes. And they said, well, unless we get a complaint, we're not going to bother you. I said, well, good, thanks. And they never did. But imagine your police department calls you to see whether you're going to keep your church open. By the way, on what basis? On the basis of some sort of gubernatorial edict, which is not law in the first place. I used to marvel. You can walk up to these places, it is the law. And I said, it's not the law. It's what some dumb governor like our governor Ralph Northam said, and that didn't make it law. The only way it's law is if the legislature passes a law that gives you the authority to do these things, or there is some sort of very specific emergency power statute that gives you certain specific forms of authority, and you can't just say, well, under emergency, I can do anything I want to do. No, it doesn't work that way. Well, under emergency powers, I can arrest you for coming out of your house when I told everybody to stay in. No, it doesn't work that way. Now, you got these leftists running around wanting MS-13 and Tren de Aragua and murderers and rapists and child molesters to have due process who came into our country illegally. They want to have them to have due process before they can send them out. But during COVID, did they ask for due process for you and me? Nope. This is what we say, and this is what's going to happen. I think I'm pretty sure it was in Kentucky, but don't hold me to that. But in one state, they actually sent police officers out to take down licenses of people who were going to church to fine them $500 for having attended church. See, that's what they want for America. They want absolute power. And so the illegal immigration that they have facilitated is part of their strategy for gaining ultimate absolute hegemony over this country. That's what they're going for. First of all, it swells the congressional districts where the sanctuary cities take place because, of course, the census counts people, not citizens. So the more people, the more congressional representation you get. So that's number one. That's strategy number one. So that means more seats in Congress for us. That's the same strategy that the South used, the slave masters used, when they demanded more congressional representation because of slaves. And when the argument came back, well, yeah, but they can't vote. So, well, but they're still human beings, and the Constitution requires that we count people, not citizens. And so you had more congressional representation in the South, still didn't carry the day, but you had more congressional representation from the South because of slaves that were there, even though those slaves couldn't vote. And this is what the left is trying to do. Same party, what they're trying to do with illegal immigrants. Swell the number of grow the number of congressional seats they're entitled to because they swell their population with a bunch of people who are in our country illegally, who nevertheless get counted and therefore affect the number of congressional seats. See, people forget about that. Even before they get to vote, they still have a political impact. And then, of course, ultimately, they're believing that they will vote, that they will be citizens. And when they vote, they're going to remember the Democrats were the ones who facilitated your fentanyl, who facilitated your child molesters, who facilitated your drug dealers, who facilitated your cartel members, who facilitated your child traffickers, getting into our country and being able to do their thing. So you reward us by voting for us. And by the way, send us some of that cartel money too, while you're at it. We're open for business. I said the cartels should have been sending a royalty check to Joe Biden. Just like he got from communist China and Russia. Pay me. I'm helping you, all right? Pay me. The presidency is up for sale. Pay me. And folks, if you want a picture of a dystopian America, just look. I just heard a statistic, oh my goodness, about that thousands, I think 75,000 homeless people where. You all remember that? But they've swelled these places with literally thousands of homeless people. Why? Because they don't care. They don't care how that affects the normal businessman, the normal child going to school. They don't care. That's irrelevant to them. All they care about is their ideological agenda and their power. And that's why they hate Trump, because he is a great, big, gargantuan obstacle in the path of achieving what they want to do. That's why they hate him. if he became a highway instead of a hedge of thorns, as the Bible calls it, if he became a highway for their unrighteousness, a highway for their abominable agenda for this nation, they'd love him. That's why they love Biden. That's why they sought to protect Biden, even though they knew that Biden was not up to the job, that he was cognitively disabled, and we should call it that. He was disabled, and they knew that. But why didn't they just say, look, for the good of the country, he's got to go? No. He only had to go for the good of the party and for the good of our search for power, our thirst for power, our hunger for power. He didn't have to go for the good of the country while he was serving as president. But he might not be able to win back the presidency, and of course we have to do that at all costs. Only thing is they outsmarted themselves and put up a dunce, an airhead, a hackling, cackling woman who just, doesn't have sense enough to come out of the rain. I mean, the woman is just, they outsmarted themselves. But never forget what their agenda is. It is power over you and me. And anybody who stands up against that, anybody who stands for the American people and stands for the Judeo-Christian value system that gave us this great nation, and for the Constitution which prescribes a limited government of enumerated powers, anybody who stands up for those kinds of things, you are public enemy number one. And right now, public enemy number one for them is Donald Trump. But you and I are in there, 15, 25, 36, 59, 347, 3,895. You and I are in there, believe me. And if they had the power and they could get to us, believe me, they'd go right down the list, and ultimately they'd find you too. I mean, folks, I wish I were exaggerating, but I'm not. I'm not. I mean, Peter Navarro was put in jail. Why? Because he did the very thing that hundreds of people have done. Refused to respond to a congressional subpoena and refused to answer congressional questions. But they put him in jail. And Steve too. So I'm not exaggerating. This is the way they behave. This is what they want for the country. This is the way they think. And of course, they try to put Trump in jail. They would love to do that. All right, I got to go. I'm way over. Look, if you're in the area, come on by. We'll be at 943 Canal Drive in Chesapeake, Virginia at 11 a.m. Live streaming about 11:15. I'm teaching a series leading up to resurrection. First message last Sunday was the path of life through prayer. And the series is called The Path of Life. And this Sunday I'm teaching the path of life through praise. I'll be teaching about Palm Sunday. And then on Resurrection Sunday, I'm teaching the path of life through power. And I'll be talking about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So God bless each and every one of you. 943 Canal Drive this coming Sunday. Don't forget our Stand Awards dinner. You know what to do. Stand up, step up, speak up, and refuse to back up. Because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit. Because we are on God's side. God bless everybody.